Hello and welcome to our daily sketching routine. It is Monday, June the 16th, 2025, and today's topic I'm going to call markers on Bristol paper. But before we begin, welcome back if you're returning and welcome if you're new to the channel. I sketch and post every day and I use a timer to stay focused and to build a habit. I'll start a 10-minute timer. So to begin with, I'll use some markers. Paint markers and also just like regular markers and color pens and stuff. So basically like the tools I usually use, but like on this Bristol paper. I mean, it works better than the flimsier sketchbook I was using. I'll put a before picture maybe up here somewhere. You can check out yesterday's video. So I'll link to yesterday's video in the description, and then that kind of has like a breadcrumb to the other videos about this. So I spent an hour total on all of this. Most of it was just figuring out some of this color. That was probably the most complex thing. This one was pretty self-explanatory. I just added details. However, I wanted to go over some of it. So for example, I used the exact same pen on these, and then this one was a mixture of the Sharpie and then the like my usual like felt tip pen. So for example, like here, I could go like this. It's starting to run out a little bit. And then just kind of have like this look to it. So that's just for like the texture. And then this was with the like a fine liner, and then this was with the roller ball. But for today I'm going to work on this some more, see how far I get. But basically this one from yesterday, I'll post the picture. It was a pencil sketch and I just kind of went in and started like painting on it, which is kind of a different approach. It's more painterly, and because I use sort of the black, like I use like a lot of different things. So I've got these paint markers, so I use some of that, different Sharpies. So I have like these color Sharpies. So just by doing that, it's going to look more like graphic. It's going to look more like cartoony because of just like some of the black outlines and stuff. Now you could go in and kind of add more colors. Part of it is keeping it sort of a limited palette so that the colors don't get too confusing. But just to get started, I wanted to figure out for myself like what the colors would look like the different markers. So just to get started, I've got these light Sharpie colors. They have like a chisel point and like a finer point. I'm going to use the chisel. When it comes to like color, you could do it like this. This is sort of like the base color, and it would look like more graphic just because it's just kind of like the primary color. However, grass, like we can pretty much assume it'll have some green in it so that you won't go too wrong. But like if you use the same kind of base color, it helps to unify it. So even if you don't use like this green on like the other areas. So let me zoom in. So I'll just kind of, part of this is an experiment. So you can see, so that orange was from the paint marker. And so the white of the paper is like a color. So as long as the white of the paper is showing through, it'll kind of look like highlights and stuff. It'll look like a color. But if you go over it with a marker, it'll be like a tint, I think. If you add white, it's called a tint. So you could go like this, for example. So I fixed some, like the drawing and stuff. So like with the pencil, because that's what this figure was. Like you can fix it with paint, since you know you can paint over things. It's opaque. It's different than like if you just sketch with the ink, like from yesterday. You have to be a little bit more precise and then kind of fill in. So basically you're working from like light to dark. Whereas with the paint, you're basically working from like dark to light because it's opaque, because you can cover up stuff. So I wanted to show, or I wanted to experiment, because I'm not 100% sure either, to see like how it reacts. So part of it is whenever I went in with like the paint, it dried overnight. So I worked on it, like the whole thing. This probably took the longest amount, but like it took, part of it was, yeah, like figuring out kind of like the technique. But now that I let it dry overnight, it's easier to like paint over it. That's one way to start to introduce some different colors. If you really want to detail something, it does take time. I mean, if you want to keep it pretty loose and like sketchy, then that's okay too. Like I could just leave it and like work on some other things. But there's some things that I kind of have questions about, so that's why I'm doing this. So for example, here's a Sharpie, like a darker color, and then you can kind of do what I did here. And so I'm just using this as like the design. And there might be some other stuff going on like on the rest of it. It's kind of a collage. It's sort of a style guide also. But like for this look, you could think about it. You could kind of approach it the same way. Think about it in terms of the color. So when you add color, it does make it more complex. And then on top of that, it's like the medium also does stuff to it. So color is kind of its own thing. Plus like the medium itself is its own thing. And yeah, just kind of like play around and take your time with it. So for example, like with the like stuff like this, you can go over it with some Sharpie and change like the color, and it'll have like color harmony because of that orange. Same with like the hair. You can, so this is like shade, like if you're making it darker. It's like you're adding the shade. You're shading the color. It's good to let it dry for a while, like overnight, or yeah, like for a little while. So you can't go too wrong because you can go over it again. Like one thing I wanted to do was kind of blend this. Like I wanted this to look a little bit lighter. This is the black acrylic paint. So an example could be kind of combining different things here. So I'm going to go with, let's just kind of stick with blue because we have blue right here. So you could use this light color, like light blue, and just kind of, so part of it is I'm not sure how this will react with different pens. So let's just see. So this was the roller ball, and it looks like it doesn't bleed. So you could do that with that roller ball. I don't know like how much you'd want to go over that ink, but you can go over it like once. So that's kind of good to know. So this is with like light blue. So I want to like lighten this up, like this background. Also, I'm going to use this over that acrylic, and you can see that I wouldn't go crazy with it. It would probably start to like make it look muddy. But you can see that you can go over that rollerball ink. And then the other one could be this other Sharpie, which is like a darker Sharpie, just to see what it looks like. So I'm going to do this. So that's what this looks like. So this is mixed medium, basically. So you can see that this Sharpie will melt, will dissolve, let's say, that acrylic, because it's alcohol, and then the acrylic paint will like dissolve. So you can get this look, which is pretty cool, actually. So it's just something to keep in mind that you can do. Now the process of it, I'm still experimenting, but the process is important too for like the look of it. Meaning like the actual like surface of the medium itself. You have to experiment with it. And also with these Sharpies, going over it again does something. So that's something to keep in mind. It's a good look. Like, it looks pretty cool. You could go over with this again, just to see. So this is the lighter Sharpie on top of like that darker Sharpie. So you can get that kind of look. Again, I wouldn't go over it like, I wouldn't like be too crazy about it. You can go over it with like the paint marker again, like this. So you can start to do this. Again, just kind of think about, well, experiment with it, and then if you have to paint over it again, then paint over it again. But like, it's good to sort of have like a kind of a process in mind. So for example, like that, you can go in and make it lighter that way, and it's gonna look more graphic doing it this way. Like, it's not some like the edges, some of it will be blended like that. Again, you can go back in with that Sharpie and kind of blend those edges. Just kind of have to experiment with it, kind of like this. I would just, like, what I'm gonna do is just sort of stick with what I'm like doing here, where like by doing this, so I'm just using like a brown kind of marker. You can, again, I wouldn't overdo it. I would just kind of experiment. Like, some of it will stick, but if you do this, it's like you're toning it. You're making it a little bit more gray, not so bright like orange. And it is like a mixed medium piece, so it's gonna have that look to it. But I kind of like that look. So you can do this to kind of like tone the color. Meaning making it look a little bit more gray. But that'll be it for today. I want to thank you for joining me for our daily sketching routine, and if you enjoy these videos, please support the channel. I appreciate it, and until next time, keep on sketching.